So we've spent a lot of time targeting learning and training titles. And the biggest difficulty, honestly, is the list building. So, there's so many different titles in learning. Kind of it depends on, what products and services that you're selling. And what's interesting is like each company kind of calls their people something a little bit different. So in some organizations, the entire training department goes by training in their title. In other organizations, they don't use training and they use learning. For the most part, when the title learning is used, I think it kind of relates a little bit more to soft skills. Then when training is used, that's usually a little bit kind of harder skills, safety training, those types of things. So it can be tough to, one, identify, what are they calling themselves? Who are the people in the training department? And then they have all of these different titles, and then they fall under different segments. So there's obvious ones like manager, director, VP, etc. of learning or of training. Those are pretty obvious. But then you start to get learning and development. And if you're searching on, let's say, LinkedIn as an example, and you type in L&D or learning and development, you get very different results. And then you have talent development. And then sometimes the learning and training department sits over in talent management, or sometimes they just call them talent. So honestly, identifying everyone in your addressable market is one of the harder parts, and that just comes down to list building. So a lot of the companies that, that we've worked with, basically what will happen is they'll come to us and they'll talk a little bit how big their addressable market is, and they have no idea that it's actually quite a bit larger just because they're messing up list building. The other thing that's weird about learning and training is so much of the budget sits in the business. So, IT has training budgets, finance has training budgets. So, if you're not calling into HR and you're just trying to, and you want to call down other paths or call into the business line, like that makes it even more complicated. Because when you call into the business line, training may be just a very small piece of what they do, and you never know who owns it. It takes a ton of research and a ton of calling around and a lot of, what we call referral campaigns, where you're setting up a campaign and the only goal is to get referred to the right person. You're not asking for meetings or doing anything. So, what we found is, especially at the lower level, when you're doing email and LinkedIn campaigns, that manager level has quite a bit of power and they're pretty accessible. From a dial to connect rate, managers and directors hover in that 5 to 6% rate. So for every 100 people you call, you'll have 5 or 6 conversations, which means calling is viable as long as you're using dialers and you have good data and those types of things. From an email perspective, it just really depends. It depends on how specific your product is. It depends on whether you have a replacement product or how new it is. You can call into learning and development right now. And if you're talking about AR and VR, you're going to book a crazy amount of meetings. But if you're talking about safety training, safety training's been around for a while. It's a replacement market. They probably have something, you're going to book a lot less meetings. So it does depend a lot on what you have as a product and service and how to build campaigns. For the most part, I would call low and try and find the right campaigns. When you go high to chief learning officers, heads of learning, heads of training, I'd mostly go with referral campaigns. So just ask them who on the team owns training or who on the team owns your specific type of training. The only other thing to note is there's some weird niches inside of learning and training. I'll use leadership development as an example. Leadership development, they're really, really interested in seeing what's new out there. And so from an outbound perspective, you can set a lot of meetings, but it's tough to actually get people to convert. So for most training types, I would recommend using our intent data and running intent data campaigns alongside of cold emails and cold calls. You'll just have a lot more success knowing that those companies are actually looking for your products or service versus just cold, where you're just going after the right companies and right titles. So It all starts with list building. You need somebody who understands list building well. Typically, if you're going off of LinkedIn, at Talent View, we've kind of done a really good job kind of organizing all of these people into specific groups, so that you don't have to do all those little one-off searches to make it a little bit easier. So starts with list building, and then it just depends on the complexity. It's a group that's very easy to get to over the phone. LinkedIn and email, it really just kind of depends, but a very viable group. And when you're going high, go for referral campaigns. So it's a few things we've learned. We've set hundreds of meetings for learning and training companies. The addressable markets are just so big that it's great for outbound. You just have to, like anything, design your campaigns in a way that make the most sense. So hope this helps. If you have any questions, always head over to our blog. We try and update it as often as possible with information about the best ways to target HR and kind of what we're learning about the industry and kind of the best ways to do this. So hope that helps. Good luck.